simple way. There are three factors to PMDD. There is that you have a cycle, so that your hormones shift. You have a roller coaster to ride. There is highest sensitivity and creativity. Nearly every one of my clients is in some way creative, empathetic, more so. Like if they did the Myers-Briggs test, for example, they will get intuitive and feeling and not thinking and sensing. I'm like that as well. I'm sort of extrovert, introvert, 50-50, intuitive, feeling, and J, which is more spontaneous. But the N and the F are the factors, but pretty much every one of my clients falls under that category. And so there are early years school teachers, there's yoga teachers, there's therapists, there's songwriters. I'm a singer-songwriter too. Therapists, artists of some kind. And so I'd be interested to know, those of you who are here, and if you're watching the replay, I'm going to post this up in the Facebook group, and I'd love you to let me know whether you're like, oh my gosh, that's so true, that's me. Like, what do you do? And if it's not for your work, you know, do you recognize yourself as being highly creative or highly empathetic? Because it's that ability to feel and be in tune with yourself that is actually part of what creates the PMDD. It's not something we want to get rid of, though. We don't want to get rid of your cycle. We don't want to get rid of your amazing empathy and intuition and feelingness. They're gifts. But when you combine it with this unresolved trauma that's sort of trapped in the body, then it's sort of this perfect storm that results in these symptoms. Because when the hormones shift, the intuitive nature puts a magnifying glass on everything, and all of that stuff that's not being processed gets exacerbated. So I would love you all to just begin by asking some questions, because this is going to be Q&A, and I'm got to plug my computer in, and I'm kind of relying on your questions for this whole thing to run tonight. Otherwise, I'm going to be just I'll be able to improvise, I'm sure. Yeah, so please do ask away with your questions. In the meantime, I will tell you a little bit more about my story, just to keep you entertained while you're thinking of your questions. There was one question actually that was asked in the group about how do you deal with friends and family who don't understand? So I thought I'd answer that first. It is really difficult because it's so difficult to explain to somebody who's never been through it. You probably felt when you go to the doctor to try and talk about it, they don't understand generally. I had some pretty awful experiences. The doctor I went to, it was a guy, it was a man, and he was just very clinical and very cold. And I just felt absolutely alone and misunderstood. So that can be hard with family members. If you're employed and you need to sort of speak to your employer about what it is, it's difficult to explain. Certainly with partners, that can be hugely frustrating for partners to make sense of what you're trying to tell them it's like. I used to say, I'll just ask in the chat, or you can raise your hand, but you will be recorded. So that's just to let you know. I said that earlier. If you raise your hand, then you'll be recorded. So yeah. And so I think it helps, I've created a lot of content that people have shared with their partners and their family members who are close to them, because sometimes it's hard to find the words, and it's really nice to go, no, see here, look, it's what she's saying. That's exactly it. It's really a really wonderful thing to be able to do, because I use a lot of metaphor. For example, I say it's like my blood turned to tears. That's what it used to feel like when I used to get this hijack that would happen sort of after ovulation. Everything would start to just feel very different, that Jekyll Hyde thing that happens. So feel free to direct them to any of the podcasts that I'm on, even if you just Google my name and PMDD in Spotify, even you'll find there, and go into podcasts, you'll find there's a lot of podcast episodes I've been on, and the message is pretty similar each time. So you could just use any of them. So questions. So Natasha wants to know, is RTT quite a bit more effective when it's done live or over the pre-recorded? So I don't have all the stats on it because I don't speak directly to everybody who purchases the online program. A lot of people write to me, but not everybody does. The other thing is, I'm not sure whether they've listened to the recording for 30 days and followed the protocol. Whereas when I'm working with you one-to-one, it's much more a hand-holding process. The other difference is that obviously when I'm one-to-one with you, I'm drawing things out. I'm watching for any little slight changes in your face. I'm able to pick up on cues and follow them. So I'm very intuitive myself and been doing this for so many years. I've had nearly 2,000 clients, probably more than that now. So I've got a big map of what links to what, and I'm quite good at having my ears prick up when I know things are going in a certain direction. Whereas when it's pre-recorded, it's not going to be the same level of, me holding the space. But I will say, because I've done so many sessions, I see the same things over and over again in those who have PMDD. And the two big beliefs that are really underlying everything, the first one is I'm not enough. That comes up over and over again. I must write it every day, once a day. And that must mean I'm not good enough. Yeah, of course. It's the same thing every time. Something back in childhood has made them feel like they're not worthy, lovable, or good enough. And then the other thing that comes up a lot is I can't trust myself. Something will go wrong. You'll think it was the right thing. And the sad thing is it usually is right, but the adults react in a way that feels like punishment or rejection. And so you begin to doubt yourself because you thought it was the right thing, but then you get in trouble. Like a client of mine, for example, thought it would be a great idea to clean the floor for her mum. She was 2. And her mum didn't think that was a very good idea. And so she sort of lost this trust in herself, in her decisions. And when you lose trust in yourself, then you tend to sort of look sideways. Well, what do you think I should do? And who should I be for you to accept me, instead of being guided by yourself? And this all leads to it being triggered, especially premenstrually, because all this stuff comes to the surface. So, I hope that answers that. Okay, so Vika asks, how does ITT compare to other trauma therapies such as internal family systems, somatic experiencing, or even psychedelic approaches? Yeah, so I think psychedelics is a really interesting field. There's definitely similarities, I would say, because it is getting to the subconscious mind and it's helping you see things that are simply not true, because that's what all this is about. It's about dissolving the conditioning that should never have really been there in the first place. You came into the world knowing you could trust yourself, that you were worthy, that you were lovable, that you were good enough, expecting your needs to be met, expecting to give and receive unconditional love. But you came into parents who had all of that messed up. You didn't realize that. You thought parents know everything, or the teachers know everything. And so when things happen based on their reactions to you, then you end up forming beliefs that are incorrect, sort of misinterpretations. Anything that works at the subconscious level, I'm all for, because otherwise you're sort of just at the conscious level, and you can analyze and think, and oh, maybe it's this, but you never really know. You end up going into analysis paralysis, whereas subconscious work is really fantastic. What I love about rapid transformational therapy is that it is so complete. I've had people who do ayahuasca ceremonies, for example, and they have stuff come up and then they say, I had something, I got some clarity, but I don't know. Whereas with rapid transformational therapy, you're not left going, what was that? I mean, it is, I call it soul surgery. We don't leave you half open. We don't leave anything left in there. We pull it out, we look at it, we go, that's what it was. Okay, we don't need that. And then I sew you back up again, metaphorically speaking. And it combines inner child work. There are elements of Gestalt therapy, timeline therapy, somatic healing, because when I do a session, I get you to scan your body, feel into your body, and feel where the blocks are, that's sort of where the energy is stuck. And it'll often be in the throat or in the heart or in the solar plexus. And we are able to speak to these parts that are blocked under hypnosis, and they will tell you what they're doing there and why it was necessary for them to come. And it's always about protecting you. The mind has one job, and it's just to keep you safe. Keep you safe, keep you belonging. So, and let me know if there's further questions to things I say, just keep typing. So Elisa says, so how long do you usually work with a client to really be sure the changes are going to be permanent? When is the work done in your experience, and how do you measure the outcome? Okay. So when we first meet, if you work with me one-to-one, we do an intake where I have a list of all the common symptoms, and then I ask you to add anything else. So there's emotional symptoms and then any physical symptoms that you have. So anxiety, rage/anger, feelings of not being good enough, depression, deep sadness. And then on the positive side, I'll score that as well. So how much joy and laughter do you have? How much would you score your self-love out of 10? So we've got the positive and negatives. And then we follow up usually after about 30 to 40 days post-session, and there will be a shift. And then I take the scores again. I usually leave at least one menstrual cycle. But then I've also followed up over the years, like done a 12-month follow-up with those who've worked with me. And what I've found is that the numbers stay the same or get even better if possible. So if anxiety was a 10 and it went down to a 4, at the year follow-up, it's generally at a 2. So it tends to, because with changing the beliefs, then the beliefs keep confirming themselves as they over time, because once, and that's what beliefs do, they keep looking for proof of themselves. If you've read any Eckhart Tolle, he talks about the pain body that's always looking for a snack to feed on. I talk about that as beliefs, and when you instill positive beliefs, then you tend to see proof of them. We have this reticular activating system that can only take in so much information, and we look for what we already know to be true. So if you have a belief that says nobody likes me, you walk into a room and someone's on their phone, doesn't look up when you come in, your mind will make it mean, see, no one likes me. Whereas once you believe, no, I'm lovable and everybody tends to like me, you wouldn't make it mean that. And then over time, you'd see more proof of the opposite. So beliefs tend to solidify over time. Okay, so yeah, so measuring the outcome is a self-assessment, and people often will write their stories, have interviews with me, so I get a really good understanding. It's not just about taking scores. We do have a follow-up at the end, and often we have an interview too if they want to share their story. It's not something that I will give everybody the option, but you're never obligated to share your healing journey. It's just if you think, oh, I saw someone else's story and that really inspired me that this could be possible for me. So yeah, I'd like to pay it forward. So often my clients will do that. And when is the work done? It's like, for me, I think whenever the score is under a 4, then I think, if anger was 0, I'd think, yeah, you need to have a little bit of pep, I think if you said, oh, anger's at a 1 or 2 premenstrually, you think, yeah, that's pretty normal. Anything above a 5, I think this is not okay. We don't want to be, that's not sorted out. We need to do that. Generally, it takes around 1 to 2 sessions to sort of move you up out of the suffering. You can keep growing, For me, with rapid transformational therapy, it's only helped me to keep growing into more and more, expanding into more and more. So I'm not pulling myself out of the muck anymore. That's a long time ago. Now it's just into higher and higher levels of happiness, consciousness, awareness. And the way, like, how do you know the changes are going to be permanent? The way I explain that is it's like once you find out Santa Claus isn't real, you wouldn't just lapse back to believing in Santa. It's at the level of belief. So once you understand it, the freedom is in the understanding. And because it happens under hypnosis, it's at the level of beliefs, the subconscious mind, and at the level of the body. It's very deep. So the body will follow the mind, whatever is being held and stuck in the body, because you've probably heard this before, that whatever you can't express consciously, your body will store it for you. And a lot of back pain is actually just resentment about something that you can't speak out loud. I have clients who come with hip pain. Under hypnosis, it's always, I'm afraid of moving forward and I'm holding her back. And it's sort of this fear that gets stuck in the hips, which is about moving forward. So it's really interesting. It's often very metaphorical, where it's stored in the body. Okay, I'm curious why RTT and hypnotherapy in general don't seem to get as much attention and research and funding as other trauma therapies. I think hypnotherapy certainly does. Let me just mute this. Just need to mute you, Nella. I need everyone to be muted. Hypnotherapy has had loads of research done, and if you search PubMed, you'll find plenty of research to support hypnotherapy. RTT, it's a small school. It's not funded by the government. They're doing their best to get more and more awareness around it and connecting with the NHS and doing pilot studies and things like that. But it's not something that's just got millions of funding behind it. So, which is a shame, but I tried to get a study up and running through a university actually a few years back, and I gathered a lot of data, but because it wasn't a known thing, the students who were going to do it felt like, oh no, I'm not sure I should do this. They felt scared. So sometimes things don't get off the ground because they're not known enough. So I can't speak much more to that other than to say, I hope it does. I hope that there's a lot more research done. And for right now, it's just a lot of word of mouth, people talking about their experiences. Okay. Elisa says, I learned a lot from you about PMDD, and all that I've applied with my RTT clients has been amazing and transformative. That's wonderful. I'm so glad. Vika, how impactful would RTT be for women like me who are already well into their menopausal transition or post-menopause and have reduced PMDD symptoms because their cycle has mostly stopped? So I think a lot of people, a lot of women go through menopause and have a similar thing sometimes happen. Like you hear a lot about women going through menopause who talk about it feeling like they're going crazy. And I think a similar thing's going on. There's a hormonal shift that's exacerbating a whole lot of stuff. And I always think with menopause, it's kind of like this trial by fire that says you don't get to be an elder of the tribe until all of your stuff has been cleared and worked through. It's sort of like it brings everything up. It puts a spotlight on everything, much like it does for those who are the healers and artists of the world, who sort of have our stuff in our face premenstrually, like a truth serum that you can't escape from. So I think menopause is actually similar to that. But I'm hoping for me that menopause is going to be a little easier than it would have been because of all of the stuff that was already cleared when I went through my PMDD journey. So reduce PMDD symptoms. So, I mean, if you've got stuff there, you don't have to have PMDD to work with me. You know, I have clients of all walks of life with all kinds of problems, phobias, relationship problems, being triggered by certain things, jealousy. It doesn't matter. The question I always ask my clients before we work together is, finish this for me. I wish I could, but I can't because. And my role is to help them to dissolve the I can't because. So you could apply that to PMDD. You know, I wish I could have a stable month. I wish I could be calmer with my children. I wish I didn't lose it with my husband. The smallest things make mountains out of molehills. but I can't because I get triggered. I can't control my emotions. My emotions flood me like a tsunami, and it's like another person. Okay. So whatever you come with, we work with what's there. And all the answers are inside of you. That's what I love about this therapy. It's not me going, do you know what I think it is? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I'm like I said, like I'm a surgeon, and it's inside of you. My job is to excavate it and go, there it is. And you go, yes. And you tell yourself what it is. You know what it is deep, deep down. And you can bring, and it fascinates me. Like the conscious mind doesn't know, the subconscious mind does. And clients always open their eyes and go, oh my God, I had no idea it was that. Or, yeah, I thought it was this. You know, sometimes you can think, oh, I know what it's probably about. It's probably about when my dad left, And it's quite often the stones that have been left unturned because they seem so insignificant, because we don't think, what we'd think, how could that possibly have left a mark? Like I had a client, there's so many stories I can tell you. Just one that comes to mind was premenstrually, she always felt, her thing was like, I just feel so disgusting. I feel so disgusting. I was like, that's really interesting because you use the word disgusting a lot. You've said it maybe 7 times in the past 20 minutes since we've been talking. So my ears pricked up on disgusting. That is a key word for this young lady. And she was only 19 or so. And when we did her session, she went back, and I didn't use the word disgusting. I just said, we're going to go back to why you feel, the other symptoms that she had. And one of the scenes she went back to was when she was about 18 months old. And it was around Easter time, and there were some Easter eggs on the table. Her dad was looking after her. He was a little bit inexperienced, and he sort of got distracted. And when he came back, she'd gotten into this Easter egg, and it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Imagine you're 18 months old, you've never tasted chocolate probably. And she just had it all over, and she was licking, and she's having the best time. And he lost it and went, oh no, because he was thinking, I'm going to get in trouble. I've let the Easter eggs get eaten. Now she's covered in chocolate. I don't know what to do. So he panicked and picked her up and went, oh God, this is disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. She heard those words, and it was so confusing. And beliefs are always formed through confusion. You try to make sense of the confusion. The mind doesn't like being confused. This cognitive dissonance, it's called in psychology. So on one hand, I thought this was the best thing ever. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was yummy. I loved it. But now the authority in my life is saying it's disgusting. So that must mean I'm disgusting, because only a disgusting person would think that something disgusting was delicious. So that was the link her mind made. And so premenstrually, she always felt like she was disgusting, and it all went back to that. There's no way she would even have remembered it, but her mind had it all there. So it's really, the stories I could tell you. Sometimes I wish I could just play sessions like movies to people afterwards, but it's just me and the client, and it's like, this was amazing, like just on such a high at uncovering what was behind everything. Yeah. So for those who trained in RTT, is there anything that we didn't learn from the RTT training that you discovered in your work specifically with PMDD that would be useful for us to know and apply? Yeah, so there's so much that I've developed on my own in the past 6 years, because like Marissa Peer said, who's the one who developed RTT, our clients teach us everything. Like my client, Marissa taught me the bones, and then my clients put the flesh on everything. Like I have learned so much through the brilliant subconscious minds of my clients. And I've got this huge map now, all thanks to them, because I've seen patterns in everyone, and it's all just makes so much sense to me. So the things the first thing, like what I was just talking about, that confusion, I cannot emphasize enough how important confusion is. I'm always looking for it. In fact, as soon as a client says, and I'm feeling confused, and I go, here we go. And there's usually that confusion. And I get them to say, I'm confused because I thought, but now I thought this was delicious, but now I'm being told it's disgusting. That must mean. And that must mean is the belief. Once you form that belief, it looks for proof of itself. So I'm disgusting. And so then you'll find proof everywhere of you being disgusting in that client's case. Or I'm not good enough, proof of that. I can't trust myself. You'll find proof of that. And the funny thing with I can't trust myself is, so imagine you've got your gut instinct that tells you if something's for you or not, just like, oh no, I don't like that person. That's something not right about that. And you follow it. It's your intuition, and it's smarter than your slower, your conscious brain. You don't even know why, but you trust it because you know it knows more than you do, that kind of thing. What happens if you go, I'm never trusting that again? Then all you're left with is kind of this brain that doesn't really know. Your gut instinct is going, get out, this is terrible, he's a disaster, he's going to hurt you. Could be anything that's wrong, and you can't hear it because you've said, I'm never listening to that again, which was a mistake, but you didn't realize it. And then things go wrong. And then you use that as proof, further proof that you can't trust yourself. And the only reason things have gone wrong is because your gut was not in the equation. So when we reconnect that self-trust, then everything starts to improve because you feel like, thank goodness, I've got my compass again. I'm not flailing about like going, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? You know best of all what's the best thing for you. All right, what other questions do we have? It can take a while for people to type. I'll just, while I'm waiting for more questions, the other thing that I do, as I said before, about talking to the parts, when I go into the body and I say, let's say, for example, you had some kind of physical pain, or sometimes it can just be a way of being, like the anger. I just flip into rage. Okay, so I want you to go inside now and find where the rage lives in your body. And if you experience rage ever, you can do this now. And if you could feel that rage anywhere inside of you, where would it be? And usually with anger and rage, it sort of sits here, like it is in the solar plexus. It's an expression of self. And I'll say, and if that rage or if that anger that you feel had a color, what color would it be? And then the client will say, oh, it's red. It's often be red and fiery, or it's like spiky and black, or there'll be some kind of quality to it that describes what the energy looks and feels like to them if they turn their eyes inwards. And then I'll have them actually become that. And I think it's really good. That's something that I added after my training, to give it a color and a consistency, so that it's sort of got this tangible nature to it. And then you also get the symbolism of it. Often it'll be, like I think a client once had something that was like blue tack, but it was all lodged in her throat, and it was there to keep her quiet so she didn't get in trouble. So these parts will have qualities that sort of show what they're all about as well. And then I will talk to the part, and I split it up. So it's only if you know RTT that this will make any sense, but I talk to the part and find out why it's there. And then we do all of the healing work. And then at the end, I read back everything that the part said it was there to do. And this is the amazing sort of transformative moment when you realize, wow, this anger was supposed to be there to protect me, to make sure I didn't lose anyone, or I didn't get hurt, or I didn't. But what you end up finding is that the anger pushes everybody away, and then you do feel hurt by it because no one listens to you. It was supposed to. Oh, that's the common thing. It's the anger's there to get me heard. But if you notice what happens when you scream and shout, no one wants to hear about it. Everyone just wants to get away, and they can't hear you. So the very thing it was set up to do ends up sort of becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you end up proving to yourself, see, no one ever listens to me. Well, they would if you spoke calmly, but you don't, because this part thinks this is going to be a better idea. Yeah. All right, I think Natasha's typing something. So would I work with a 12-year-old? Yes, I would, but I would I mean, I would work in I guess, in a different way, in a way that's more child friendly. For example, putting into hypnosis, I would have them sort of go down some sparkly stairs or something that's a little bit more child friendly. Children are amazing at it, actually, because they're up until about the age of 7, 8 years old. We're in an alpha brainwave state like sponges. That's why children can learn a language without an accent, because it just goes right in and they're able to take it in at the alpha brainwave state. By the time you sort of get to 7 or 8, logic, reason kicks in, and you start to have a faster brainwave state. So children are really suggestible. Habits in adults take at least 21 days. Some of the latest research says 60. And I think the older you are, the more set in your ways you are. And so children are far more quick to change, quick to learn, which is what this is really. It's learning, or actually unlearning a lot of the time. And they're very imaginative as well. So when I say, go inside and I want you to find the anger, where is it? And they're not stuck. They're like, oh yeah, it's here. And it's this angry ball. And, so yeah, you can definitely work with children, but I'll just do it in a way that was, for a child. I'd be talking in a way that made them feel like I was their teacher or something, So yeah, I would work with a 12-year-old. So she got a period a year ago. I'm seeing some symptoms already. Yeah. And this is such an important thing you said. I can see those beliefs. I try to work with her on it, but I am her mum. Oh man. And if you're the mum, you got to be the mum. Ask me how I know. Because it's so hard being a mum and a therapist, and you've got all the answers. And then you have teenagers and you think that they'd love to hear your advice. And I'll tell you, it's like pouring a cup of coffee in the wind. They don't want to hear it. And they just want you to be their mum. They just want you to be there to say, oh, darling, oh, really? Oh, that's sad. Oh, tell me about it. No fixing. No, here's what I think you should do. They can't take it from us as mothers, I find. They want us to be their mums. And so, yeah, having a therapist work with your child is a far better option, because then you just get to stay in mum mode, which is what they need. Could this help a teen girl who struggles with extreme anxiety? Yes. So anxiety is a very common thing that I work with within PMDD. And it's funny to see how there are so many factors of PMDD and everyone's is different, which sort of shows, look, it's an exacerbation of stuff that's there. Otherwise, we'd all have exactly the same thing, but we don't. Some have deep, depressed sadness. Some have such awful low self-esteem. Some have rage. Some have social anxiety or fear of the future. They're all PMDD symptoms, and not everybody has the same stuff. So anxiety, generally, comes down to the I can't trust myself belief. Also a bit of self-love. If you think you're not lovable, sometimes social anxiety will come into that, thinking no one's going to like me, and you just feel like you have to wear a mask all the time. And that's the social anxiety. But the fear of the future and what's going to happen next is that I don't think I'm going to be able to handle it. And that comes from, usually in childhood, something will happen where the child has had too much put on them, and they've felt like, I have to do this. There's nobody else, but I can't. I have to, but I can't. I have to, but I can't. They get stuck, and that creates anxiety. That's probably 70, 80% of my clients with anxiety have something where they've thought, mum can't cope. I wrote a post recently about this. Overwhelmed mothers create overwhelmed daughters who become overwhelmed mothers who create overwhelmed daughters until somebody breaks the cycle. Because the child sees the mum, and children are so loving and beautiful, and they think, oh, poor mum, she's really upset, or she's stressed, and I don't want to worry her. I'll deal with it. Or she'll get angry with me if I tell her what's happened. I'll deal with it. But I can't, because I'm only 4. I had a client who had an alcoholic mother, and she was 2. And see, these memories go way back. I've had clients go back to the womb as well, you know, being born and in an incubator, all sorts of things. You wouldn't believe. It's incredible. But this girl, the memory she went back to was when she was 2 years old. And this was just one of the scenes. We put together a few scenes to get a full, clear picture. And her mother was drunk and she was eating all these prunes. This was so graphic, it's never left my mind. And she went to go upstairs and she just passed out drunk on the stairs. And this little girl is going, "Mommy, wake up." And there were all these prunes like half falling out of her mouth. And this little 2-year-old is going, "I need to get Mummy awake." And she's all alone and she can't lift her up the stairs. And there's that, it's got to be me, but I can't. But it's all on me, but I can't. And this creates the anxiety because you form the belief. So here's the confusion again. I thought my mum would be here to look after me, but now she's passed out, and that must mean I have to do it, but I can't. And if it's expected that I'm meant to do it, but I can't, then that must mean I'm not capable. And then you get this "I'm not capable" belief, which will create an anxiety of "I'm not going to be able to cope, I can't handle it." And we have to go back and go, "Darling." And the freedom comes when you say, "I was 2, like as if I was supposed to be able to handle that." And then you free yourself and you realize, I I was never supposed to. That was age appropriate overwhelm. Of course I was going to feel overwhelmed. I should never have been put in that situation. And it's not to blame our parents and to get stuck in anger. It's to realize I started to believe I wasn't capable. And I see it wasn't my fault. And it's all I could come up with at the time when I was 2. But now that I'm 32, I don't need to believe that anymore. And because this all happens in hypnosis, and there's a lot of inner child reparenting, rescuing, upgrading, remerging, there's all these tools that happen within an RTT session within the 2 hours. That belief just dissolves. You can't believe it anymore. It's just not true. Like, I see it. I see how I started to believe it, but now I see that was never true. Of course I'm capable. I always was. Wow, what an amazing little girl I was at 2 years old to even try to get my mother up the stairs. How responsible I was, even at 2. That's incredible. I'm incredibly capable. Complete reframe. And then you walk into your life when you open up your eyes, a bit like Marty when he comes back to the future and he's gone back to the past and sorted everything out back there. Everything's better and different. So let me just go through any more questions. Yeah, getting to the subconscious level is excellent. Yeah, it's really wonderful. And young people are, like I said, generally really, really good at it. But they have to want to do it themselves. We all have to come to that. If someone says you should do this, they'd have to sort of understand enough about it to say, yeah, that sounds fun, or that sounds interesting, or that sounds like I'd like to try that. Because at the end of the day, it is you that is the power to change your mind. You're the one that has the light bulb moment. You're the one that has to want the change. And that's a very important part of it. And I'll just shelve that thought because I will speak more to that in a minute because it's really important about secondary gain. And if I forget to come back to secondary gain, can someone write in the comments secondary gain? And I'll go, oh, yes, good. So Natasha says, what do you think about onset time of PMDD? Like for me, it feels like very clearly when I was 29. One month, my PMS was way worse and it just stayed like that. Like there was a trigger possibly. Yeah, I think there can be something that happens that can just set things off. It can be becoming a mother is a big one. Where you becoming a mother makes you see this baby and go, whoa, this is what it's meant to feel like, the unconditional love. How come I never felt that? And it can stir up a lot of stuff. It can be getting married. It can be getting into a relationship, a serious relationship for the first time, where all of your father wounds just get triggered like crazy, and you're like, what's going on? So I think it can be different for everyone. For some, it is all the way back when they're a teenager and as soon as they get their cycle. Other times it can be big hormonal changes like giving birth, or a big relationship change, or a huge stressful life event, because cortisol is linked to progesterone. They're created from the same precursor, and you may have read about this, that cortisol robs progesterone production. So if you're very, very stressed, you may find your period comes late. It's because you've thrown your hormones off because the cortisol's chewed everything up. Okay. I would love to understand the physiological mechanism of how underlying beliefs can exacerbate PMDD symptoms. There is a book by Gabor Mate that goes really deeply into this. Now, what is it now? Does someone know it? It's just gone right out of my head. It's like, I think it's When the Body Says No. That might be the name of it. And he goes right into the deep explanation of the hormones much more deeply than I just attempted to explain it. So the physiological mechanism of how the underlying beliefs can exacerbate PMDD symptoms. Yeah, I would say to go deeper into that, read the book. I'm a little more in the metaphorical. So I talk in terms of, there's a box of pain inside of you, and when the hormones shift, the box opens up and it floods your body. And then you're getting all of that trauma sort of in your system somehow. And I don't know exactly how it works, and I need to read that book so I can speak more deeply to it. But I know that book, I've been told, is like, when I read that, it all made sense. So it is on my list to read. And if anyone has anything they'd like to add about that, actually, I do have something I might be able to. No, it might be too tricky to find it. No. Okay. So Elisa says, since PMDD is often misdiagnosed and misunderstood, where did most of your clients come from? They just found me through me sharing my stories on YouTube, on podcasts, Instagram posts, word of mouth. That's just how it's been. And the more I've worked with, it's been just a big snowball effect. Have you been able to teach about PMDD to doctors? A lot of my clients have written to their doctors and told them about their experience, which has been really good, because they've got nothing to try and convince them of. As you know, it's not one practitioner against another. I live in Denmark as well, so I've spoken to my own doctor about what I do, but there is a bit of a language barrier for me. I speak Danish fluently. I shouldn't say that really, but I do find it's going to be strange to go. I always feel like a less intelligent, less funny version of myself when I speak Danish. So I haven't gone out and sort of preached to the Danish doctors, although I'm married to a doctor, but he's not a GP. He's a pediatric cardiologist. So, but he loves what I do. You know, he was kind of skeptical in the beginning, as most medical professionals are when it comes to things. And he's very, you know, logical and skeptical, but he couldn't deny, you know, what was happening. And it does make a lot of sense to him. And as a doctor, he feels like, you know, it's so frustrating for doctors, because patients come and say, I want the pill that fixes this. And like, it's not that simple. And as you can see from me explaining it, you can't just take a pill and make this go away. You can stop your cycle and just try and even the hormones out completely and just not have a wave to ride. You can have a hysterectomy and get rid of your cycle. You can take SSRIs and just try and numb yourself to the emotions that you're feeling, but it's not actually going to heal anything. I was on SSRIs for 6 years. Everything was still there. It doesn't change anything. Yeah. So yeah, so I just teach what I can to those who are ready to hear and hope that the message spreads. And it has spread. The awareness of PMDD has grown so much. When I started out, hashtag PMDD was like, I don't know, there was maybe 1,000. And now there's millions of posts about PMDD. Oprah talked about PMDD on her Instagram a couple of weeks ago. It's become mainstream now, and a lot more people are understanding and talking about the trauma element of it, which when I began, I felt like I was just a pioneer on the mountaintop going, there's no one else up here, it's just me. Um, and my message lands much more easily now than it did in the beginning. Um, yeah. Yeah, when the body says no. Yeah. Um, yeah. What about certain menopausal symptoms, hot flashes, sleep disruptions, etc.? Yeah, I feel like menopause is something I'm going to have to learn about when my time comes, which it's on its way. And I'll probably, once I go through it, have more to teach about it. I think it is down to, um, the hormones, the estrogen drops. And I mean, I remember when I was breastfeeding child number 4, I think it was. I have 4 kids. It stops there before you all wonder how many children does she have. My estrogen got really low, and I started getting all the symptoms of menopause. I'm like, what's going on? And it simply was a hormonal thing. So I think I'm not against things like hormone replacement therapy if it's done correctly. There are just physiological changes. We're not really meant to live this long. So um, yeah, so that's I just think part of getting older. But I do think a lot of the emotional stuff, sleep disturbances, a lot of things, brain fog, can have roles to play that have emotional root causes. But I haven't worked with a lot of menopausal women, so I can't speak to it very well, I guess. So as I'm waiting for more questions, and no one reminded me to talk about secondary gain, but luckily I remembered myself. So secondary gain, you may have heard about before. It's when there is a payoff in you keeping the problem. And this can be something that holds people back from healing, when the payoff of staying unwell is greater than the perceived benefit of healing. So if you have a lot of symptoms, or if you've tried everything and you still feel stuck, or there's a very small majority of my clients who don't shift. Generally, I'm pretty good at catching this particular secondary gain weakness before we even start working together, and I won't work with the client. I'll just say, you're not ready for this. I think counseling would be really good for you. You're not at the point where you're like, I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I don't care. I want to master this. And the language you'll hear is like, my PMDD. There's ownership on it. The identity is wrapped up in my PMDD. And you'll see there's a long list of benefits in their lives that you think, this is going to be tough for you to give up. So your husband does all the packed lunches because you need to sleep in. You get, I don't know, you don't have to go to work anymore because, it's too hard. And you can think of all the things that you get because you've got the PMDD badge. And you have to be ready to go, I'm ready to give all that up. Because if you are invested in the benefits, which I know you sounds crazy, like there's no benefit to having PMDD, but there are. The belonging, there are some women who've got like the teal ribbon on as a tattoo, and I'm going, that is not a good sign. Like, you're so invested in the identity of having PMDD, the belonging that it gives you in these groups, and I'm sure some of you have been in these PMDD groups. Yeah, it's not a happy place to be. There's a lot of stuck in victimhood stuff. And I always say, you can be in victimhood if you want, but then you've got to be in victimhood. It's not very fun. So there are payoffs to it, but I think it costs you far more to stay there, because you're not going to ever master it if it's too enticing to keep it. So that's just what I wanted to say about the secondary gain. And that doesn't just apply to PMDD, that can apply to anything in your life, like what is keeping this particular trait or habit get me that I'm not willing to give up. The secondary gain, firstly, my marketing tends to repel people who are in victimhood. They don't like me. They find me very triggering, and they can become a keyboard warrior and have a whole lot of things to say to me. And I go, okay, it's cool. You're not at that point. I was in victimhood at one point. It's cool. I'm not for you. My work is not for you at this point. So generally, the way I talk, what I share, my message is highly repellent to anyone who wants to remain in victimhood. Usually, before someone works with me one-to-one, we will have a discovery call, which is 15 minutes. And I'm pretty good at spotting the language that's like, oh, this is not a good match. And generally, it just won't go anywhere, because they'll talk to me and they'll hear the radical responsibility that I expect you to take, and it doesn't sound so nice. They're like, oh, I thought you were going to give me a magic pill. It's like, well, it is pretty magic, but you're going to have to own everything. Not everyone's ready for that. So generally, it's before we even get to working together that that will become clear, and it just actually won't go ahead, because it's not a good match. It's not a good fit. You're welcome, Elisa. It's been a pleasure. So it's been about an hour, so I won't keep you all too long. But any last questions before we finish up? And while you're thinking of those, you've probably seen that have the online Red Tent program, which is a self-study one. It has 2 guided RTT sessions within it, which you can, and I won't call it RTT because it's not with me one-to-one, so we'll call it transformational guided hypnotherapy. That is one on self-love and the other on self-trust, because they're the things, more or less, that are usually in one way or another creating the symptoms. And within it, there's also, which I haven't covered today, is the metacognitive psychology, which is really about becoming more present, so that you're actually operating from this place of the neocortex, not the fight or flight, not the emotional brain, but the part that's actually rational and reasonable, and developing that more and more, and questioning, which I won't have time to go into metacognitive psychology today, but that's also part of the program. And I teach you a lot of kind of self-healing tools as well. There's something called the focus method, which it's an acronym: find the trigger, own the emotion, come with love and compassion to your younger self, undo and upgrade the belief, and then solidify the belief. That's also a whole module which I teach you, which is like really being able to give yourself kind of a mini RTT session just by sitting with yourself and asking the right questions. Yes, so didn't know you'd have questions, Natasha. I did the self-study, been wanting to do the one-to-one. Yeah, I can find you someone at a lower price than me. I work with at a pretty high level now, with not just in PMDD, but with executives and people who are wanting to shift and upgrade. But I will say, if you wanted to work with me one-to-one, usually it's $14.95, but I will, for those who are here tonight, and if you are watching the replay, then I'll do it at, like, I think it was my 2022 price of $11.11, which is a 30-day package where you have the intro call with me, a full questionnaire to fill out, which I read through so I get a really good understanding of what you're going through, an RTT session, custom created hypnosis recording with binaural beats, which actually puts your brain into an alpha brainwave state. So you take in the transformational recording, which is based on your own revelations, by the way. I'm not just going to say all these suggestions at you. I'm going to put back in what you found out, right? So it's your own wisdom being delivered back to you when you work with me one-to-one, your own deep understanding. So if you think of it like we're weeding the garden, we're planting the seeds of your understanding, and then the recording is like watering those seeds so those neural pathways become stronger. And then you have email support with me for 30 days, and then we have a follow-up, about 15, 20 minutes, where we take your scores again, and you can see how far you've come. And it's pretty crazy, like, oh, someone's got the time wrong, they've just arrived. Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. Like when I read the scores back and I read things back to my clients that they said 30 days ago, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was me. Like I remember, but it feels like another person, like they cannot even relate to themselves anymore. It's really, really incredible. Yeah. So Heather, I know you just joined, but we actually started an hour ago. So I'm sorry that you've got the time mixed up, but I'm going to post this as a replay in the Red Tent free group, so you can watch that. And yeah, and that's everything for tonight. I hope that's covered everything as best as I can. I'll wait here for just one more minute to see if there's any other questions. Okay. All right, cool, Alice. Okay. All right. And yeah, I'm very friendly. You can reach out to me over Facebook Messenger or whatever if you have any questions that come to you later, or in the Facebook group so everyone can benefit from the discussion. And yes, and thank you very much for spending your time with me today. See you next time.